If you look at ceramics, it's always telling a story. There is no single culture that does not make pottery.
The artists that exist quietly outside the mainstream, and then one day the world catches up to them. Magdalena Udundo is one of those artists, and I think it's time to talk about her. Dame Magdalena Udundo was born in 1950 in Nairobi, Kenya. She received her early education in both Kenya and India, and started out not as a ceramicist but as a graphic designer. She moved to England in 1971 to pursue that path, and it was there, almost by accident, that she discovered pottery. And that accident changed everything.
I came here in Cambridge in 1971 as an art student to do a foundation course. I ended up doing a commercial art course, but it's while I was a student here that I happened to come into the Fitzwilliam and later on discover the Museum of Archaeology. For me at the time, the Museum of Archaeology offered that other aspect of art and objects that hadn't been included in the Fitzwilliam itself.
What makes the story so compelling from the start is that she didn't just stay in England and learn from one tradition. She went back to Kenya, to Nigeria, to New Mexico, traveling the world, studying traditional techniques, absorbing centuries of ceramic history from cultures that rarely get placed in the same conversation. Ancient Greece, Japan, the new people of Nigeria, the black wall vessels of San Ildefonso Pueblo, I think that's how you pronounce it. She took all of it and made it entirely her own. The black wall vessels of San Ildefonso Pueblo, I think that's how you pronounce it. She took all of it and made it entirely her own. As ceramics are hand-built using a quilling technique, no wheel, no shortcuts. Each piece is burnished by hand, covered in slip, fired, burnished again. At first, firing turns the clay red-orange. A second firing in an oxygen-poor atmosphere turns it black. The result is these extraordinary vessels, voluptuous, smooth, quietly commanding, that look like they've always existed, like they belong to every era at once.
You've said that you find firing the most stressful part of the process.
I do, and yet it's the most important aspect to the work because it finishes the work. It really defines them if they become pieces of work in themselves. I start off first with a lump of clay and then gouge and dig a hole from the inside and then build the walls using the clay from inside until I get the walls to a certain height. The inside has to be really perfect before the outside actually takes shape. And then I color it and bring it in, creating the shoulders, and then start working on the neck of the piece. And that's when each piece starts altering and taking its own shape.
And the thing that makes them so unforgettable is that they look like bodies, specifically like the bodies of women. A curved base that suggests a pregnant belly, an elongated neck that echoes Mabunto hairstyles from the Congo. A posture that feels like it's about to move. She has said herself that the female form is at the core of her work, and you feel that the moment you stand in front of one of her pieces. There's a presence to them that is hard to explain but impossible to ignore. Her work sits in some of the most significant collections in the world: the British Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Art Institute of Chicago, the National Museum of African Art. In 2012, one of her pieces sold at Sotheby's for $134,000, making it the most expensive work by a living British ceramist at auction at that time. By 2021, that record had been broken again when another of her pieces sold for £378,000, more than 4 times its estimated value. But what I find most moving about Magdalena Udundo is not just what she made, it's what she represents. She arrived in England in 1971 as a young Kenyan woman pursuing a creative career, at a time when the art world still had a habit of dismissing ceramics as a craft rather than art. She built a body of work so undeniable that the conversation had to change around her. She didn't ask for permission, she just kept working. And then the fashion world noticed. Jonathan Anderson, one of the most respected creative directors of his generation, the man behind Waver's transformation into a global cultural force, and now creative director of Dior, has had a long and genuine relationship with Udundo's work. The two are actually friends. He owns several of her pieces personally, and back in 2017 when he curated an exhibition called Disobedient Bodies at the Hempworth, Wakefield, he placed the sculptural ceramics in direct conversation with fashion from designers like Christian Dior. He saw what she was doing and recognized it as fashion, as sculpture, as something that belonged in that dialogue. Then in January 2026, Anderson made his haute couture debut at Dior. The show took place in the sculpture garden of the Musée Rodin in Paris, and it opened with 3 dresses. Long, swirling pleated silhouettes in black, white and burnt orange. And if you looked at them and thought they reminded you of something, they were meant to. Those opening dresses took their forms directly from Ubundo's burnished clay vessels. Her curves, her proportions, her red, orange and black palette translated into plissed silk georgette, each pleat painstakingly hand-stitched onto an internal framework. Couture doing what only couture can do. Immediately after the show, the Musée Rodin opened an installation called Grammar of Forms, where 15 of Anderson's new couture silhouettes were displayed alongside 7 of Odundo's ceramic works and 9 historic Dior designs. Fashion, sculpture, craft, and history in the same room, speaking to each other, and Odundo herself was there. She watched her vessels inspire dresses that walked on one of the most watched runways in the world. When asked about it, she said she was intrigued, that she trusted the process, that she wanted to be surprised, and that when the models came through, she saw not only her own work, but all the things that had inspired her. The Elizabethan references, the Zulu beadwork, the court costumes she had absorbed on her own journey, her influences coming back to her through someone else's hands, in a completely new form. That is what it looks like when an artist's work truly enters the world. Magdalena Odundo has spent over 50 years building something patient, precise, and deeply considered. She has taught generations of students, held the position of Chancellor at the University for the Creative Arts, and been appointed Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, and still her work speaks for itself before any of those titles do. She's proof that you do not have to shout to be heard, you just have to keep making work that is so honest, so rooted, so completely itself, that eventually the world has no choice but to stop and look. This is the Slick Cut. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.